Yes, people, yes, people, yes, people. Welcome back to the We Talk Football podcast. We're back like we never left, back with Kwaku, and we've got the pleasure of being joined by Josh Sexton of the Anfield Wrap to talk the weekend's events. Now, Josh, how are you feeling in the aftermath? You've had a few days to clear your head after the final. How are you feeling, mate?
Better after yesterday. We managed to make it back for the parade, and the parade I think has sort of lifted spirits. I think you've seen that in the players, like the way the players have come out and talked about the parade, but also for the fans. I think it was just the tonic that we needed after, for what the season was for Liverpool fans and all the sort of hope we went into it with. This last week's obviously been a disappointment, losing out on the two biggest trophies, but then obviously what's happened off the pitch in Paris as well was particularly sort of disheartening. So I guess being able to have that sort of communal display of unity yesterday again, and being able to do that even after the pandemic years and that kind of thing, like we didn't get to celebrate our Premier League title like that either. So being able to take to the streets of Liverpool yesterday and sort of celebrate with these players and show our appreciation as well for what they've done this season has sort of lifted spirits, I think, and rescued the mood around the club.
And with it, like you say, it's been like a bit of an outpouring of emotion when you watch the parade. It was 2 years of pent up just frustration, because Liverpool have been one of the best teams, if not the best team in the world for the last couple of years. And where you've picked up the Premier League or Champions League trophy and then the Premier League trophy, you haven't really been able to celebrate the players and show them your appreciation. Obviously, you're filling Anfield week in, week out, but having that parade and really showing that unity of the city, and we saw it in the images and pictures that have come out from the parade, and the players really enjoyed it. And what I do respect about it is, after such a tough loss, and we're obviously going to talk about what happened before the game and after the game with the French police and the mishappenings in Paris, it was good to see the players actually enjoying being with the fans and celebrating their hard work that they put in for the last 2 or 3 years. So I do give major props to Liverpool for that. And that's major props to Jurgen Klopp for creating that and really geeing the players up. And despite the fact that you did lose in the Champions League final, it has been an incredible season for Liverpool, and it was good to kind of see you guys get that reward for the end of the season.
100%. Like, one of the things that, when you win the Premier League, like you'll know this, Quaker, really is one of the good things about being able to do that is, going to opposition grounds all over the country and being able to like categorically sing that you are the champions of England and sort of, almost go around with that like swagger. And we never got the chance to do that. We won the Premier League, and then we had a whole season of behind closed doors football after that. We got a few games at the end and a few games around sort of winter time where there was a handful of fans allowed in, but that was never, that was never the full thing. That was never, as I say, being able to go to away grounds and sing about being the champions and that kind of thing. So that was taken away from us really by the pandemic. So to be able to get that yesterday felt like we got a bit of that back. And I love that Jurgen Klopp was so defiant in his response to that as well, because he mentioned it when he was interviewed on the parade bus yesterday, sort of saying that this is partly our celebration for being champions in 2020, and then he quite quickly moved to say, and this is just for us, it's not for anyone else. So like, it basically sending a message to opposition fans that if they're going to say, oh, how can you have a parade for a title that happened 2 years ago? It's not about opposition fans at this point or anything like that. It's just about Liverpool, and that was all about Liverpool yesterday. That was all about Liverpool being able to come together as a city and as a club, and being able to celebrate, the success we've seen under Jurgen Klopp. And like you rightly say as well, Kweku, like that is built by Jurgen Klopp, and he'll be modest about it, and he'll say, the fans had a role to play in it. Of course, the players have had a role to play in it as well. But we've had managers, managers throughout my lifetime where there's never been such a unity at this club like there is under Jurgen Klopp. I remember back as far as Gerard Houllier, and even though Houllier, had the fan base quite united to some extent, there were still people who were clinging on to, him and Roy Evans being joint managers and feeling like that sort of soured things for him. Rafa Benitez started really well, but then things started to fall apart from there. So, and you go through the rest of the managers and there was constant divisions. So Jurgen Klopp has united this club and this fan base like no other, and that's why you get to see those things you get to see yesterday when there's hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets and being able to get the chance to celebrate these players. It was a special day.
I mean, that is the most subtle dig I've ever experienced in my life, where, Kwaku, how it feels going to other clubs and,
Sorry.
hopefully one day as a West Ham fan, I'll have that feeling, Josh, but I agree with your sentiment. I mean, obviously, like, it was an encapsulating moment for Liverpool's season yesterday, really, and ended on a high. But unfortunately, was on the back of, as Kwaku alluded to earlier, some really sour off the pitch events. Prior to the Champions League final and after. You were at the game, of course. What were your experiences on the day? Like, what kind of things did you see?
So we arrived at the stadium about 2 hours before kickoff, which sort of, puts to bed any lies that UEFA were immediately starting to spread about fans arriving late at games. 2 hours before kickoff is ample time to be able to get in, to be able to get yourself settled in sort of usual circumstances. And one of the things that became like immediately apparent is that it was quite a hard ground to like access in a general sense. Like there were really like designated access routes into the ground, and we went to a couple of them, and it was either like filled by Real Madrid fans, in which you were thinking like, oh, probably just the wrong side of the stadium, or the police had created massive bottlenecks, which meant there was just queues going really, really far back. So we managed to access it in quite like an orthodox way. We found this road up beside a load of restaurants, and the police had put their vans in the road there, but the pavements were quite clear to get past. So we got through there, like went through ticket checks and stuff. But apparently, like from other people's stories, after a while they just stopped doing those ticket checks, which allowed people, you know, like people without tickets to get in. And so we got to our turnstile, and we were turnstile Z, and that was closed like as soon as we got there. So this, as I say, is about 2 hours before kickoff, maybe, you know, slightly after now, given what we had to go through to get actually towards the stadium, to the turnstiles. And our turnstile was completely closed, and there was no stewards anywhere near it, no police anywhere near it, just a load of fans sort of confused and wondering why our turnstile was closed. So we were, you know, very wary of getting too deep into the crowd at this point. So we walked around to turnstile A, and it was at that point we saw like a load of like basically local kids or local youngsters like run towards the gate, storm through. Like quite a few of them got through and stuff like that. Quite a few of the stewards, understandably so, just sort of got out of the way. But then at that point, the French police shut down that turnstile, and then we went round to B, and the same thing happened. Another surge of like these lads, and then the turnstile shut down. So we were a bit like, we're running out of options here, because, you know, as far around as Y, Z, A, and B are all Liverpool turnstiles, and they were literally all closed. And this is now like an hour and a half before the game. So you are starting to, you know, worry that you're not going to be able to get in if there's no sort of solutions there. So we went round to like the neutral section. And the same, like we got in the queue at this point. We were like literally in the queue, like right by the gate. So we're thinking, oh, as long as the stewards will let in here, we'll be absolutely fine. And at first they weren't. There was like women screaming and stuff like children crying, because the stewards were saying like, we can't let anyone in because all the other turnstiles are shut. Like we only need people with the right tickets here. And then a load of like Parisian kids like stormed again, basically from behind us. So like barging past people, and they made it over the turnstiles. And I think at that point the stewards got a bit of a sense of what was happening, and we're like, right, we're just gonna have to start letting people in, like, you know, checking tickets. So they checked our tickets, and saw they were for the wrong turnstile, gave it like a bit of a rip, and then made us jump over the turnstile to get in. And even from there, like even inside the ground, there was problems and stuff, because they have like gates on all the walkways, so they like weren't letting you through gates, telling you to go into like the wrong sections of the stadium and stuff like that. So like the organisation from start to finish really was awful. But I consider myself to be one of the lucky ones on the day, because basically the most trouble I got into was people barging past me. You know, there wasn't any, I didn't get tear gassed, I didn't get, you know, mistreated or mishandled or manhandled by police or anything like that. So I feel quite sort of lucky for my experience. But obviously it was massively souring, and you sat there watching the first few minutes of the game and not even really being able to think about it, sort of looking around to see, you know, whether people you know had made it in, just sort of seeing like harrowing looks on people's face and stuff. It was really quite like a, you know, a terrifying experience for all concerned.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. Yeah, I mean, there's been. I know that a lot of the issues on the day were from, you know, alleged fake tickets. But I know that Andy Robertson has now come out and said that, you know, friends and family of his couldn't get into the ground off tickets that he sourced directly from the club. So maybe they stopped accepting tickets as a result of the people that were storming the ground or something. I'm not sure. That's speculation, of course. But sorry, Quakes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like you touched on it there, about there was chancellors trying to get in without tickets. And I think the thing that's troubling me the most with the situation is the narrative that's been perpetuated. I think mostly mainstream media have kind of been cautious with this as a result of past mishandlings of Liverpool fans, the situation we all know about Hillsborough. But the narrative being perpetuated by maybe rival fans online is that loads of Liverpool fans were chancing it and trying to get into the stadium, and that was the reason for the bottlenecking, and that was the reason for the disruption before the game. But that's at every single football game. I've been to hundreds of football games, and you're always going to get chances. I feel like there should be situations, UEFA should be prepped for that. When I talk to like other Liverpool fans, they talk about Kiev, they talk about how it was stringent to almost a fault, where there was checks at every single gate. And that's how it should be for a Champions League final. Granted, this final was moved a little bit later on because of the happenings in Russia, but if a stadium is not fit for purpose to try and stop people coming in who haven't got tickets, which happens at every football match, then that stadium is not fit for purpose to host the biggest game of football. So from your point of view, how many people were trying to get in without tickets? Because if you listen to rival fans on Twitter or wherever, they're trying to make it sound as if there was hundreds of thousands of people trying to get in without tickets. And from Liverpool fans I've talked to, it just doesn't seem like that was true.
Well, that's the thing. That's the lie that's being perpetuated right from the top as well. It's not just opposition fans online, unfortunately. By the time I got into the stadium, it was 9:15 at this point. So this was 15 minutes after the game was meant to have kicked off, and I arrived 2 hours before kickoff. So I'd already been outside the ground for that length of time. But then by the time you got in, UEFA had put on the big screen saying due to the late arrival of fans, and it's so like immediately the wheels are being set in motion there for the lie to start. And then you look on Twitter after the game, and like you say, quickly, like there's people saying, "Oh, Liverpool fans turn up about tickets." They were showing videos of people running to the turnstiles, but like those people that run into the turnstiles weren't Liverpool fans. They weren't English voices. They weren't Scouse voices. They weren't dressed in red like most people who turned up to a final were, because you go there in your colours, don't you? They were lads in. The lads who pushed in by me were in Franz Benzema shirts, PSG shirts, things like that. So they're not, you can't class them as being Liverpool fans trying to get into the game without tickets. And like you say, there's always a really, really small minority of people who will come and chance their hand and people who will try and, get through these checks. But if the checks were good enough in the first place, then those chances wouldn't be able to stand a chance. Part of the problem was that the organisation from start to finish was terrible. All these access routes that were so hard to get to, and where police were bottlenecking fans through. Eventually they had to drop those checks because of how far back the queues went. So then by that point, you're letting ticketless fans within the grounds of the stadium. And then at that point, there's gates ahead of the turnstiles. So rather than having, like Anfield, I think the turnstiles are great at Anfield. They're tight, but they're tight for security reasons so that you can't, you couldn't get loads of people through them at once. But they had gates here and then the turnstile just after. And it was a turnstile you could quite easily, jump over if you had a run at it, which you've got because the gate is a few yards behind you. So I think you're right to say, correctly, that from the stadium point of view, it wasn't fit for purpose to host this game. But then also the policing, the stewarding, the organisation around it all, and the subsequent lies after showed that the organisation around this was completely wrong, and then the lack of accountability after is one of the most scary things, because Liverpool fans have, and Liverpool as a city has lived through the lies of Hillsborough and how the establishment tried to perpetuate that and tried to cover it up. And even as soon as on the day there was those lies being spread, in the morning after in the papers those lies were being spread. So to see that sort of happening again to Liverpool fans, and Liverpool fans immediately the blame being pushed onto them was sickening, to be honest, because it's not the experience we had. And I'm pleased that the media, in terms of a national sense, I've seen lots of national journalists coming out and supporting Liverpool fan stories. Sky were obviously doing a big thing of walking around the stadium and saying what they had seen. So it's good at least this time that we have the media on side, because that feels like it gives our stories some momentum. Otherwise we'd end up just shouting into a void again, and we've seen how that's happened in the past.
It'll be interesting to see the next steps of what happens here, because there's going to need to be some sort of sanction or some sort of penalty applied to someone. If it's not the Parisian force that was obviously there enforcing these, quite frankly, barbaric actions. I've seen videos online. We've all seen them of, kids getting taken away from their mums, people being pepper sprayed. The kind of scenes that would be reminiscent in a war zone, not in a football game where you're trying to take your family and maybe taking your son to his first football game. So no one wants to see that. And it'll be interesting, as I said, to see what the next steps are going forward. That's obviously like super sour experience for yourself, and hopefully it didn't ruin the game. What were your experiences of the game, and what was your take home come the 90th minute, really?
Yeah, it was weird, really, because I think for the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, I was replying to messages from people from home. I had loads of people messaging from back home, making sure I was safe. I was checking in with people who had come to the stadium with, messaging in group chats and stuff, just sort of making sure you're okay. And that lasted for probably about half an hour. And then I did manage to sort of settle a bit and be able to watch some of the game. But the biggest issue was really with that is that Liverpool's best spell was that first half an hour where your mind's sort of elsewhere. And then I think from there Liverpool lost a bit of control of the game. It was interesting because I was speaking to a Real Madrid fan before the game, and he talked about this idea that Real Madrid had lacked tactical control this whole Champions League run. but had managed to win these games and get through these knockout stages, by moments of magic. And I think it was almost the opposite, really, in this game. I think Real Madrid had such a good tactical approach to the game, had such a good control of the game. They managed to keep Liverpool at arm's length in such a great way that Liverpool were reduced to, a few pot shots. I know they got in behind a few times, and then Courtois, who I thought really stood up on the night and put in a great goalkeeping performance. There was a lot of block shots from, Militao and Casemiro and stuff like that. So I think Liverpool can look at the game and say that they were on top for most of it, and I think the stats showed that. But Real Madrid had Liverpool at a comfortable sort of point, and even into the the dying embers of the game, I felt like the referee stopped it a little bit shorter than he should have. I think there should have been more at the time for the antics that Real Madrid were displaying, but they played that game perfectly, and I think even if Liverpool had 10 minutes at a time, by the end they probably wouldn't have scored because of just how well Real Madrid had approached that game.
Yeah, and like you say, I think a lot of credit has to go to Real Madrid. In terms of spectacle of the game, we've seen quite a few Champions League finals. The last three, in fact, have ended 1-0. As a Chelsea fan, the way that the game played out with you in Madrid was very, very similar to us against City. City had a lot of the ball, but I felt that Chelsea were in control. And I felt like that was the case on Saturday with you and Real Madrid. You had a lot of the ball, and you did have some good chances where Courtois pulled off some incredible saves, especially the save for the Salah effort in the second half. It was one of the best saves I've seen in a while. It would have been one of the best Champions League goals I've seen, especially with the touch and the way that Salah brought it down. It would have been a fitting moment for the kind of season that he's had. But Real Madrid seemed to just have control and seemed to pick their moments. Obviously, Vinicius Junior was the man who got the goal. He was their outlet, really. He was pegged on the left-hand side. And there's been a lot of criticism of Trent post-match. I thought Trent actually had a decent game on the ball. Despite the fact that the goal maybe came from a lapse of concentration from him. So speak on Trent's performance in the final, because we've seen Vinicius Junior come up against Reece James, we've seen him come up against Kyle Walker. So he's played against all of the prospective right-backs for England going into the World Cup. Speak about how you think Trent did against Vinicius Junior in the final.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a thing with modern football and like the social media world in particular, is that we can't acknowledge that someone can do something good, and then the person who is going up against them can also be good. Like it's like Liverpool with the Premier League this season. Like people are saying online that Liverpool bottled the Premier League and stuff like when we came from 14 points behind to bring it back to one. That to me is not bottling the Premier League. That's Liverpool mounting a good comeback and just falling short. And I think in this game I said it early on, probably about 4 to 5 minutes in, I said that Trent and Vinicius both looked like they were well on it and well on top of the game, and there's almost like I think of like the basketball term when you come to this, like good offense always beats good defense is what they say in basketball, and that to me is just what happened on the night. Vinicius Junior got his moment. Trent wasn't probably where he should have been at the time that ball came in, but there's all sorts of defensive issues for Liverpool for the Vinicius Junior goal. But I thought both of them played particularly well, and I think that's the thing that we should take away from this, is that Vinicius Junior is one of the best young talents in the world, and we've got one of the best young talents in the world as Liverpool fans, but also England fans should be looking at that and acknowledging the amount of talent that they've got right back there, and rather than saying Reece James is the winner or X is the winner and Y is the loser. You should acknowledge the amount of talent we've got there. But that's been a thing for as long as I can remember, since social media's been a thing, because I've had debates about Messi and Ronaldo down the years, and it's almost like you can't say one's good without shitting on the other. You have to say that you're able to say, I should say, that both of them are good, and I think Trent and Vinicius were both great on the night.
Yeah, I'd totally agree. It became apparent that Liverpool were in trouble for me, in my personal opinion, is when they scored the first goal that was, deemed offside. What were your initial thoughts when that goal went in? Did it look like it was offside to you?
It's so hard to tell on the ground, really, because I've not watched the game back, and I don't know if I ever will at this point. I think some of those memories deserve to just stay in the past for me. But so it was hard to see initially where Benzema was in the build-up, but I believe it ricocheted back off Fabinho, didn't it? It felt like there was just a bit of a scramble in the Liverpool box, and heads were sort of lost a bit there in the Liverpool sense defensively in terms of where everyone should have been. And the check just went on for ages. It felt like hours in the ground, and because the initial decision on the field was that it wasn't a goal, you just thought that you thought that it was going to get overturned because of how long they were taking with the decision. So as I say, it was hard to tell from the sort of eye test whether it was onside or offside, but I was completely convinced. And like you say, Jamie, from that point, I was worried for Liverpool really, because Real Madrid had shown that they could get in amongst it and make Liverpool ask questions of themselves, and that was the first moment, and obviously the goal comes not too long after.
And what next for Liverpool? Because I think wrongly so, there's a lot of people saying that this is a disappointing season. There is no world that exists that winning 2 pieces of silverware out of 4 available is a disappointing season. You push Man City, who in my opinion are one of the greatest, if not the greatest Premier League team that we've seen, just for their sheer dominance and the way they can accumulate points and rattle off wins. And you push them all the way to the final day. You got to a Champions League final and you won the League Cup and you won the FA Cup as well. So overall, it's been a good season for Liverpool. But what we have seen in the last couple of days is maybe the start of a transition. Sadio Mane, if reports are to be believed, he hasn't actually come out and said it himself. We're all still waiting for that big announcement that he promised us. But if reports are to be believed, he's on his way out of Liverpool. It looks like Bayern Munich may be the destination for him. Mo Salah is in the final year of his contract. I do think that he'll sign a new contract. I believe Liverpool should give the man whatever he wants because of what he's done in the last 5 years for the team and the club. And Bobby Firmino, who was great when he came on, and I think really affected it, and maybe if he came on a little bit earlier, we might have seen a different outcome in the game. He's also out of contract next summer, and Origi, who's the ultimate cult hero, is on his way to AC Milan. So there is a lot of movement in terms of transfers of Liverpool. So what next for you in terms of rejuvenating that front line and making sure you keep things fresh so you can challenge again next season?
I will just have to disagree with that, Kweku, about Divock Origi being a cult hero. He's a Liverpool legend, genuinely, honestly, bona fide Liverpool legend for the moments he's given us as Liverpool fans and the things that he's helped us win down the years, because he has, like, his goals have been so crucial in so many different Liverpool seasons. So I'd have to say that he is a Liverpool legend, and I'm sad to see him go. And it would be the same for Sadio Mane if he goes, you know, on obviously a much bigger scale in terms of the consistent quality that he gave to Liverpool as a starter. I sort of hope that there's you know, something to be done around Mane this summer, or if not into next season, because I think Bayern Munich will be sniffing around him as he's coming towards the back end of his contract, because that tends to be the way that Bayern Munich do their business, is they try and get people on cut price deals who are you know, towards the end of their contracts, or they'll just hang around enough until their contract expires. So I'm hoping that at least we can keep Mane this summer and into next season, and maybe he'll do a Luis Suarez for us and sign a new deal that gets us, you know, a big fee and a release clause to be recouped next season. But if he does choose to go, then that'll be a massive blow for Liverpool, and it'll be a big hole to fill in the squad, not only, you know, in terms of the dressing room, because he's a massive character, but obviously on the pitch and the quality he's given, because he's been a big part of the second half of Liverpool's season. Like, him moving into the number 9 role has given Liverpool a new sort of lease of life going forward, and obviously it's allowed for us to accommodate Luis Diaz, who's been a revelation as well, and was quiet in the Champions League final, which was a shame, because he was a player you felt like could have really had a big impact on that game. But I thought, again, Real Madrid played him really well with Valverde and Carvajal on the right hand side. I think Liverpool have a really solid foundation there going into next season, and we saw last time Liverpool had a solid foundation how well they did in the league, which was 2018-19. Obviously went and won the Champions League, and then 2019-20 they started the league like a house on fire. So I'm hoping for that same thing again next season, but I guess that is all contingent on the business we do this summer now. If Sadio Mane leaves, making sure that he's adequately replaced, if that's even a thing that's possible to do with a player of his talents and his quality and how much he's given to Liverpool Football Club. But I think it's going to be a really interesting summer for Liverpool now, and this season has given us so much to build on. I think we may just have to pack a few of those domestic cups in again rather than going all the way in them, because I think that's probably cost us a bit of energy towards the end.
Well, last week we had Harriet on the podcast, so obviously from the Anfield Wrap, as you're aware. And before we do let you go, Josh, I know you're super busy. Obviously, in the light of the recent news of Sadio Mane, and you're talking about, you know, if he does go out the exit door, obviously replacing him with someone of note. When the news broke on Twitter, as a West Ham fan, I was kind of devastated and also terrified for multiple reasons, because Jarrod Bowen was tweeting, he was trending as a result. Now, again, disregard football transfers, disregard wages, football finances and everything. At this moment in time, would you swap Sadio Mane for Jarrod Bowen?
I wouldn't, to be honest, and that's it's no slight on Jarrod Bowen at all, because I think he's an unbelievable player, and I think I think Liverpool have every right to have been interested in him. There's been stories coming out about Liverpool looking at Jarrod Bowen in summers in the past, and I can tell that Jurgen Klopp's a big fan of him, because every time Liverpool play West Ham, Jurgen Klopp brings him up in press conferences and that kind of thing. Yeah. So that there clearly is interest from Liverpool's side there. But in my opinion, if we're going to sell Sadio Mane this summer, we need to be going out and getting another big name. We had Kylian Mbappe a few weeks ago saying that Liverpool have been interested in him. That's really the sort of name we should be going for, because that's the level that Sadio Mane is on. If he is going to leave the club, then we need to make sure we're replacing him with another big name to, give us as Liverpool fans some security, if nothing else, that the short term at Liverpool is going to be in good hands, because we could bring Jarrod Bowen in and be confident in the options we have in Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz, but they're all players who have still got some way to go to be at the level that Sadio Mane is at. So I would like to see us go out and get someone who's a bit more ready-made than the sort of potential that Jarrod Bowen and Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota have.
And I really hope that's the case. But what I would say, just to caveat that, is you brought Sadio Mane in from Southampton, and Sadio Mane went on to be Sadio Mane at Liverpool. You brought in Salah from, what was it? Roma, wasn't it? Was it Roma?
Yep.
Yeah, you brought in Roma, like he was, and they've both obviously then gone to play at unparalleled heights. So from a West Ham fan, Jurgen, stay the F away from Jarrod Bowen, please. It's going to derail our season completely. You can't have him, right? But yeah, anyway, it's been a pleasure having you on today, Josh. Where can everyone find you on socials?
I'm JSexton24 on Twitter and Josh C. Sexton on Instagram.
Amazing. All of Josh's links, as well as the Anfield Wrap, will be in the link will be in the description of the video, guys. But Kwaku, where can they find us?
Find us on Twitter at WTF Podcast 90, on Instagram at We Talk Football Podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back with more videos like this very, very soon.